Well, India will be the chair of the United Nations Security Council for the month of August. India is a non-permanent member of the UN High Table for a 2-year term period. With me is India's envoy to the United Nations. It's a pleasure having you and welcome to WION. And my first question, an obvious questions. It has been almost 7 months since India has been at the high table. We have seen number of things happening. You have been regularly addressing. The EM has addressed. The Foreign Secretary has addressed. Now, of course, India will be the chair of the United Nations Security Council. In these last 7 months, what has been India's focus?
Firstly, let me thank you, Sidhant, for having me in your program. As you pointed out, it has been 7 months since we entered the Security Council, and this is the 8th time actually we are in the Security Council. Given our size, as well as an independent foreign policy, I think it was expected of us to play an important role. And in the last 7 months, we have tried to play that role. I believe that we have not only taken forward a forward-looking approach on various issues of peace and security, but have probably provided the much needed balance in the deliberations within the Council. As you know, we bring with us expectations from the developing world that we will be their voice in the Security Council, both as a co-developing country as well as an emerging economy. We have, of course, have our own priorities as well. For example, terrorism, peacekeeping, regional issues, particularly in our neighborhood, Africa, conflict resolution with special focus on women and youth, reform multilateralism, etc. So in the last 7 months, I think we have done reasonably well. In our neighborhood, we have provided the necessary balance and focus to the discussions and the Council's pronouncements, outcome documents, which is what we call them, relating, for example, to Myanmar and Afghanistan. Our inputs have naturally been of great value. On Africa, our emphasis on greater sensitivity to African priorities and views, including that of the African Union, has been welcomed. We have also been vocal on issues relating to the Middle East, since we have always had a very strong and historical links, whether it's Syria or Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, or Iraq. I have also been chairing 2 important sanctions committee, as you know, namely the Taliban Sanctions Committee and the Libya Sanctions Committee. So overall, Sidhant, I think I can say that our contribution has been quite significant and probably well appreciated as well.
Mm-hmm. So now it looks the responsibility and contribution are likely to increase in the month of August as India becomes the chair of the United Nations Security Council. What will be India's key focus? Any signature events we are looking forward to?
During our presidency, I think we will be focusing on 3 major areas, namely maritime security, peacekeeping, and counter-terrorism. We plan to highlight these 3 themes through the 3 signature events which we will hold during our presidency. Maritime security has always received a very high priority in our foreign policy. We have been a net provider of maritime security, particularly in the Indian Ocean region. Consequently, we believe that it is time for the Security Council to take a holistic approach to the issue of maritime security that safeguards common prosperity and other security interests. The Security Council has passed resolutions on different aspects of maritime security and maritime crime. But we feel that it is time that these are all brought together and discussed in a holistic manner. Peacekeeping is an issue that is very close to our hearts, given our own long and pioneering involvement with peacekeeping, including the involvement of women peacekeepers. The peacekeepers function in volatile situations to enforce the mandate of the Security Council. Therefore, I think it is incumbent upon us to ensure that their safety and their security, they're given the highest importance. You are aware that we provided vaccines for all peacekeepers in response to Secretary General's call. Therefore, I think in the larger context of peacekeeping, we will be focusing on how to ensure the safety of peacekeepers, especially by using better technology, and how to bring perpetrators of crimes against peacekeepers to justice. And we are strongly advocating for proactive measures to protect the protectors. On counter-terrorism, it is, of course, a national priority for us. We are firmly against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and we believe that there can be no justification whatsoever for terrorism. And we will continue to keep the spotlight on this matter. And we will be discussing the Secretary General's report on ISIL and Daesh.
So now coming on the one key topic that India has been talking about, that is the UNSC reforms. Has something happening on the ground in terms of the reform movement? Because this entire process, it looks like it's taking a lot of time. We know last year, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he spoke at the United Nations General Assembly, he had given a clarion call. But has anything moved on the ground?
Well, the short answer to your question is things remain the same. The simple fact is that it has been 75 years since the UN was founded, but its decision-making structures are still stuck in 1945, and they do not reflect the world as it stands today. The World Summit document adopted in 2005, and it called for an early reform of the Security Council. And it has been 16 years since that document was adopted, and nothing has happened. In the meantime, the world has changed even more in these 16 years. Groupings which are more reflective of a changed world have sprung up, like G20, for example. And the center of gravity is shifting towards such groupings precisely because the Security Council is still stuck in a time warp. The overwhelming majority of UN member states firmly support the comprehensive reform of the Security Council. An expansion of the Council in both the permanent and the non-permanent categories is indispensable to make this body more representative, legitimate, credible, and effective. So an immediate and time-bound text-based negotiation is essential. A transparent, inclusive, and a result-oriented process is essential if we are to move decisively towards a concrete outcome. So procrastination is no more an option, though it's a strategy being adopted by member states which do not want any reform. And they use the current discussion in the IGN, that's where we are discussing it, they use these discussions in the IGN as a smokescreen to stop all progress, not realizing that they are destroying the credibility of the Security Council itself.
So my next question goes to the region, that is Afghanistan. It is a situation which is being keenly watched across the region, but especially here in Delhi as well. What India is planning to do when it is at the United Nations Security Council? We recently saw the UN report as well. So what will be India's focus on making sure that Afghanistan is an issue where there can be a consensus globally, especially at the high table?
Now, I think you've raised a very important question. Of course, you already heard about our position on developments in Afghanistan from the External Affairs Minister. The situation in Afghanistan is a matter of very deep concern for us. The violence has been continuing unabated. The UN report, which you referred to, says that the number of civilian casualties in the period May to June, it exceeds the number from January to April. And the casualties are only growing. Targeted killings are increasing. Women, girls, and minorities are being systematically targeted. So as my minister mentioned earlier, India would like to see an independent, peaceful, democratic, and a stable Afghanistan free from malign influences. We have been calling for immediate cessation of violence and to ensure that the neighbors are not threatened by terrorism, separatism, and extremism. And we have consistently underlined that the gains of the last 2 decades, especially with respect to women and minorities, should not be lost. It is important that any government that comes to power in Afghanistan is seen as legitimate in the eyes of the people. Consequently, we cannot have unilateral imposition of the will by any party, and the peace negotiations should be taken seriously by all parties. So I believe these are the common concerns of members in the Security Council as well. And we will continue to work with other members in the Security Council towards this front, as well as in the Taliban Sanctions Committee, which we are chairing.
Mm-hmm. So my last question to you is on the issue of cross-border terrorism, on the issue of terrorism. A consensus do you see happening when it comes to United Nations Security Council? India, of course, has been talking about a common definition of terrorism. That is the convention. It has been languishing for almost a decade now. So What is your plan on that front?
No, Sidhant, you will recall that I mentioned that this will be a priority area for us in the council when I spoke to you last. And we have consistently kept the spotlight on combating terrorism, both inside the council and outside the council. In the recent discussions on the global counter-terrorism strategy, which we just adopted, we have not only strengthened the efforts to combat terrorism, especially, for example, in financing of terrorism and the use of new technology like artificial intelligence, drones, etc. But we have also prevented efforts to dilute the focus on terrorism or to provide justification for terror, for example. So in the council, we have made sure that terrorism-related issues are not lost sight of. And India, as you know, will also take over as the chair of the counter-terrorism committee of the council next year. So, and as I also just mentioned now, we will also host a signature event during our presidency in the context of the Secretary General's report on ISIL and Daesh. So we are focusing on terrorism in the Security Council and outside, and we will keep the focus and we'll keep the pressure on this.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION, and it will be a hectic month for you, August being the presidency month for us, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much for speaking to WION, sir.
No, thank you very much for having me in your event, and we will definitely be in touch. Thank you, Sidhant.